Hello, hello world. This is Callas Software. My name is Dietrich von Seggern. I'm CEO of Callas Software. And I'm glad that so many of you are here with me. And a few of you are still joining. So let's have a little bit of a talk before. So the whole session, this is pdfToolbox 15 launch event. We want to present to you new tools that just have become or will become available in pdfToolbox 15. The image that you see, I just ask, as you do in these days, I ask AI to come up with an image for new tools in my toolbox. And that is what these AI has created. I would say it's something like a triangular wrench or something. So I don't know how useful that actually is. So let's have a look into what tools pdfToolbox 15 comes up with, what is new in pre-press automation. First, a few words on the making of pdfToolbox 15. So as always, the most important part in it, or very important part of it, is actually you. So all the feature requests that we have gotten via support, via direct communication, and even more, as in the past, via our events, specifically via 2 PDF Camp events that we did in the last year. And that by far was the most important input for features. And right now already the recommendation to consider to come to our next PDF camp, especially if you are missing anything in what we are going to present to you in the next 2 days. The other important ingredient to pdfToolbox 15 is actually pdfToolbox 14. Since we've released pdfToolbox 14 in 2022, we had 4 minor releases with lots of bug fixing, a few new features, but lots of bug fixing. And that is because one of the most important features we believe for pdfToolbox is its stability and reliability, that it just works with every PDF file. And that is not a given in a world where every other day a new PDF creator application is around creating PDFs in a new way, and then you need to have a software that reliably can deal with these PDF files. And then we've gotten that stable foundation, pdfToolbox 14, and so we are proud to now almost be ready to present to you pdfToolbox 15. Last week it turned out we will not really make it to, actually the real plan was to have the release ready as of today. It's not yet fully. It will be available in 1 week from now. So Tuesday next week, we will release pdfToolbox desktop, pdfToolbox 15. But you should be able to follow our presentations, our demonstrations using a pre-release. The pre-release is available to you right now. You just have to enter in your browser pdfToolbox15.callassoftware.com. You can see it here on the screen. You can also see it in the footer of my slide. And I just see David nodding. So he also has entered it into the chat pod. So you have it. You can download it. You can activate it as a trial. It doesn't have production quality, but it has been tested. It's pretty close to the final release, so feel free to do whatever you want to work with it, to create new profiles. There are only minor details currently being worked on. Mark just sits in an office next to me, testing a release candidate. Important for the ones that are on Mac, it's not notarized yet. That means if you just would double-click the installer here, it would tell you that it can't start it because it may have malicious software. So you should right-click on there, click on Open, and then you will see a dialog that lets you confirm that you want to open the installer. So that is important. Yeah, and now the team. So today 2 hours, tomorrow 2 hours are presented to you by David, sitting here to the left of me. Everybody knows David, so and he will introduce himself later on. And Vincent, sitting in front of me, he is in charge of everything that happens here except in front of the camera. So he's in charge of sound, video, everything. Yeah, and partly also for the software. Yeah, this is your team. We heavily miss Sarah. Sarah filed in sick yesterday. She's has issues with her eye, so David and we had to take over, and we have Cindy, of course, who is in the background, off stage, organizing this whole thing. So 4 sessions on 2 days, and I believe really packed with features and information. We try to condense as much or everything into 4 hours. Probably it's on the edge, so it's lots of information. Right after these few slides, we will look into some what we call fundamentals, color-related stuff, and a little more features in pdfToolbox 15. Then we will have a short break. Then David will go on with a talk on profiles and reports. Tomorrow, 3, we start again. There it's more on verticals, label, packaging, variable data, also bleed. David has taken over the part of Sarah in that session, and then there is one session at 4 tomorrow about JavaScript enhancement, and then a few closing words from myself. So that is the schedule. Yeah. Important, all the times are in Central European time. Each session will last about 45 to 55 minutes. We should have a short break. And then important, you have to register for all sessions separately. So we've seen that this very first session has more registrations than the other ones. So if you not have already registered for all the other 3 sessions, you should do so. So at 4 o'clock, we will, or shortly before 4 o'clock, we will close this session and then get into another one. Everything that happens in these 4 hours will be recorded. So recording is running, and we try to make the recording available as soon as possible after this event has finished. So that's that as a welcome. And now, as I've said, we have, I believe, lots of things to present to you. Let's just start. Yeah, here, Sarah is still on the slide because I miss her so much. I had to take over a few of what she has prepared for this event, and you will see what that is. So session is Session title is fundamentals. So a few things that are not just related to one particular feature, but it's more related to various fundamental improvements in pdfToolbox 15, a few color-related improvements, and a little more. Fundamentals, general improvements. First, there is what we call smart resolution, or in other words, limit resolutions for large format files. What does that mean? In many fix-ups and checks, pdfToolbox internally renders a PDF page or all the pages in the PDF file. So here are the fix-ups and the check properties that are based on internal rendering of the PDF page. I don't want to mention them all, but just as an example, so when you generate bleed, in order to be put at the page edges, here the first fix-up, the page would be rendered and a new image would then put next to the trim box. Similar to irregular shapes, to irregular bleed, or when you convert the whole page into an image, so then you would render the page and would directly use the result as page content. So these are all based on rendering. And a few more that are also based on rendering don't really and directly use the image. So if you, for instance, if you would crop the page based on rendering, you would crop the page, you would first render it, but you wouldn't use the result. So you would render it, but then you would throw the result away. Similar for creating shapes or all the effective ink properties where you determine the ink amount in an area on the page or so. That is also based on rendering. So far, so fine. It works nicely. So what's the issue here? The issue actually is large format files. So you may enter a reasonable resolution for rendering. So no rendering can take place without a resolution. And you'd say, okay, 300 ppi is what I want to use. And then once in a while you have these large format files, and that means lots of memory is being used because so many pixels have to be created. Yeah? So if you have large format files, or you can just say large files, and in our definition that is where a page where at least one dimension is above 75 centimeter, then we consider this to be a large format file. And then we've seen that also in support. You may use lots of memory, long processing time, and if the results are directly used, you will also have very large files. So the solution here is the smart solution. The smart resolution here is the ability to adjust resolution. So in all of the fix-ups and checks that I've just mentioned, you have a new checkbox with the name Smart Resolution for page dimensions above 75 centimeter. And if you enable that checkbox, it will, if the one dimension is above 75 centimeter, it will apply a resolution factor. So it will multiply, in my example here with 300 ppi, it will multiply 300 by 0.75. If it's above 1.5 meter, it will apply 0.5 resolution factor, which means effectively you will use 150 ppi. So you wouldn't use that feature if you are processing large format files all the time, or you wouldn't neither have to use this if you only use business cards, for instance. But if you have varying page dimensions, this is a really smart way to address this issue. Yeah, and again, this is available in all of these fix-ups and check properties. Next topic. Next topic is related to pdfA and more specifically to conformance level U in pdfA. What is conformance level U? U stands for Unicode, and that means, for instance, in pdfA 2U, that means all the text that is being used needs it needs to be possible to convert all the text that is used into Unicode. And only if that is the case, you can search for text, or you can copy text out of the PDF file. So it's not just required that all the text can be rendered. It's also required that it can be searched for and that the text can be copied. So that is important to understand when we are talking about this feature. The other thing that is important to understand is pdfToolbox has fallback conversions. So if the regular conversion fails for conversion from PDF to pdfA, for instance, because some low-level issue exists in the PDF internal syntax, you can specify that in such cases you want to convert all the pages into images. And pdfToolbox is smart, so pdfToolbox 14 already was smart. It kept the original text in such cases. So it somehow saved the text and kept it as invisible text. So you would have the page as a result, and or the text, of course, is also then in part of the image, but you can still mark the text, you can still search for the text because the text is kept. That is smart and nice because text is important, of course, in a document, but it has an issue when it comes to pdf2a to U because of Unicode. So if the original text couldn't be translated to Unicode, it may happen that you would also keep the Unicode issues. So a smarter way to address this would then be to throw all the text away and create new text out of the image by using OCR. And that is now possible in pdfToolbox 15. There is a new pop-up here, text handling for image conversion. And there you can say, so I don't want text at all. I want to use the original text as invisible text, so what was happening in pdfToolbox 14, or I want to create new text by means of OCR. That's that. Next one. The next feature is, I assume, interesting for everybody. So, and this was one of the features that Zara was responsible for, also in development. So she was in charge of this derived checks feature in the object inspector. So what does it do? You know the object inspector probably. It's a nice tool. What you can do is you can select an object, and then on the right-hand side, it will give you lots of information, in this case, about this callas software logo here, so image resolution and so forth. In pdfToolbox 15, you have two new buttons here, derive check and create check. So there are two new buttons, and what do they do? What they do is when you click on derive check here, it will display a couple of checkboxes here. So you click on derive check, you will out of a sudden a couple of checkboxes appear, and the create check button is enabled. So you can select properties of this object that you want to use in a check. And if you would then click on create check, it will create a new check for you with conditions for all the properties that you had selected. So let's have a look. And I really have to say, this turned out to be very, very powerful. We had this on the list, but we were surprised how nicely that really works when you deal with it. So let's have a look. We need to enable the object inspector here, and then I can, as I've said, I can select an object. I see the parameters here, and I have my new buttons here, derive check. So let's use that one here, pdfToolbox desktop. And then I click on derive check, and it shows me the checkboxes. And then I can say, okay, I'm not interested in the alpha value. I'm not interested whether the object is set to overprint or not. So I can select which properties are interesting for me. And if I made my selection, I can say create check, and will create a new check for me. And now I have all the properties here that I had selected. I can click on the test button here, and then I have my result. And then I can see that in fact it indeed has there now is a check that selects this text that I had picked up beforehand. What is also new in the PDF inspector and the object inspector is that we introduced the location here. So my check actually now has also a condition that specifies this location of the object. if I don't want that, I could have disabled the check marks before, but I'm still able to edit it here. So I can still here remove that condition from my check and test it again. And it has now 2 matches, not just the first line here, but also the second. And if I want, so now it finds me all these objects and that specific font that was used in that specific size, font type. So all the parameters of this object are now encoded into my check. It comes up with a default name, derived check for text, and in parentheses filled. So let's save that. And now I have a new check here, but I'm not so much interested now in the check. What I want to do is I want to use this as a filter. So I can now create a fix-up and say, okay, I want to use set color. And I want to, now I need my glasses. I want to use this new check, derived check for text, filled. And I could say, okay, make me something or give it a new color, which is somewhat greenish. And then we use the test again. And it has now converted my text here into green. Yeah. So it's quite powerful to create new checks. We don't need that. Moving on. Another new feature is test mode improvements. You probably know test mode. This is a mode in pdfToolbox Desktop. It's available even without activation. Not everybody knows. So you can use the test mode even if you have a license for pdfToolbox Desktop. You can modify profiles, checks, fix-ups, process plan. You can test them out. You have many tools in here. It's quite powerful for profile creation. The only thing that you can't do, you can't save the results. Yeah, and this is the test mode as it is available to you in pdfToolbox 14. And here we have both next to each other, pdfToolbox 14 and 15. And then there are a few differences. You have a few new options in pdfToolbox 15. There is details view, there is hits only, and there is show custom areas. Let's have a look again. What Sarah has prepared is a process plan here, and that does 2 things. One, it creates a varnish in front of some text. So a new form is being created on a layer, and then it checks. So the 2 steps don't really make sense. There are no way connected to each other. There is another step that just checks for text in a custom area. So the whole process plan has only been created to demonstrate something. And then we use that in test mode. And now it first creates a new varnish, and it will create it here in front. So again, we see a different color for pdfToolbox Desktop Training Manual, but in this case, it's a new object created in front of the original one. And then I have a text is in custom area. And that is, here is a new checkbox that was not there in pdfToolbox 14. And if I click that, if I activate it, it will indicate where on that page my custom area is. So it's quite often in pdfToolbox, also for effective ink amount. So in various places, you can specify an area on the page either by means of an offset from the trim box or from the page edges, or by an offset from one corner of the box and the height and the width. And so far it was always like measuring and trying out to find out what area you are actually specifying right now. With this checkbox, guessing has an end, so it's straight indicating here the area that is picked in the checkbox, that is used in the check. And you can imagine that Sarah has created this by means of the new derived check feature here. Otherwise, it would be difficult to exactly find that location of the text. But anyway, that is one of the new features here. The other one, or the next one is, okay, wrong. Here I have hits only, and there was active. So if it's not active, you will, here is no hits only button, and now there is. And that will hide all other objects, so I can only see those objects that are identified, that are found by my check here. So I have on my 2-page PDF file only the text in that area here is visible when hits only is on. Next one is, now I have the differences view. Next one is the detail view. And there, first I have, when I double click on here, it indicates, or in the actual object, so it enlarges, it somehow enlarges the object. Then I have a layer view. So if my PDF file has layers, I can also switch the layers on and off. I didn't have layers in the original, so nothing is visible here, but my result file has created the varnish and has created it on a layer, so I can enable and disable the layers. And if I disable, you see that the blue varnish is invisible. And then I can make it visible again. And the one that I believe the most powerful one is actually the Lupe tool. I can, zooming is sometimes, takes some time in the test mode. This is just related to the architecture, how it's being implemented. But now you have a nice Lupe tool that is immediately available, so you can specify what zoom factor you want to use. So you could zoom, not 50, so you could zoom pretty far, and then you can go over the PDF page here, and it will zoom the respective area where your mouse cursor is, and it will also indicate with this cross mark here in the Lupe window where your mouse actually is currently. So and then of course you could also modify the sections here. Yeah. I want to 200. Yeah, so you should be aware that these features are there and that you can actually use them. And then there is another one in this create preview section here. And create previews always means you need to run the test mode again. So if all the other things are immediately available, but if I would now enable shapes, it's not immediately available because it says create preview. That means it needs to create the preview again. So that just means I need to run the test again. So it runs the test again, and then I said there is some varnish being created. That means there is a create and apply shapes feature. And then here I can see the shape that was actually created. So I can double check whether it has created the right shape. And then here, when shapes is active, so if I go to original, you see that you don't see anything in this area. But if I click on shape preview, there's a slider now. And with this slider, I can control the transparency of the parts of the pages, of the objects, the visibility of the objects that aren't part of the shape. So thereby I can really see where my shape has been created on the page and how it relates to the rest of the content. Yeah. So again, I believe it's quite powerful, and yeah, as profiles, process plan are getting more complex all the time, you need a powerful tool to create them, to maintain them, to improve them. Next one. More options for creating files and actions. There are actions in the process plan, and that is pdfToolbox 14. In an action, you quite often can create files that are not actually PDF files, and then that are just put aside. So next to your PDF file in this example, you will have preview images, each one with 72 ppi. Yeah, so that would be the result folder. You have your original file, which has the name colors label, and then it would create a colors labels _1 for the image that was created for this one page PDF file. In pdfToolbox 15, you have many more options for all these actions here. Yeah, so whenever something is created at the site that is not a PDF file, but something that has been derived from the PDF file. So that could be content export, meaning text, EPS export, Zugwert report, ICC profiles extracted, layers variations that have been created, visualizer reports. So whenever this is possible, you have now options to have a prefix on the file, a suffix, you specify a folder, replace the name with prefix or suffix to completely create new names. So you can specify what should happen with these files, and to demonstrate it, here's an example. So you specify _72 ppi as a suffix, and you say that should be created in a folder preview. And then in our example here, we will have an additional folder next to the output file preview, and in there is a JPEG file with the suffix. So far, fundamentals. Now, next one is related to color. Yeah, this one is somewhat complicated. So it deserves a little bit of explanation. It's about RGB tolerance when color converting to gray. What does that mean? It is in the convert color fix-up, and there you specify destination. Here we have some CMYK color space, and you have a checkbox preserve black objects. That was there all the time. It is in pdfToolbox 14. And it works. So what it basically does is, if you have a CMYK object in the original that only uses the K channel, the black channel, then in the result file, you will also only have color in the black channel. That is pretty easy and straightforward. It's not that easy when it comes to RGB, because in CMYK, it's clear what black is. In device gray or in gray, it's clear what black is. It's not that clear in RGB. In RGB, the only rule that you have is when all three colorants, when all three channels are red, green, and blue, have similar values, then that is probably somewhat close to gray. If they are using the very same value, then it's clearly gray. Yeah, and then the engine needs to recognize, okay, here the three values are the same, so that is black, RGB black, then I will convert it to the K channel and CMYK only. But it's already clear there needs to be a tolerance. You almost never have exact same values, or you may have, but not always you have. Sometimes they are close, but are not the same. And I'm not sure how good you can see that via my presentation here, but in the lower, in the three patches at the bottom, I'm using slight variations, yeah, and especially in the very light one here, you can see, even though there is only 1% difference, it's slightly warmer or maybe a little more reddish than the other ones. Whatever, I'm not sure whether you want to say this is gray or it's not gray. So do you want this to show up as a CMYK value or as a K only value? I don't know. But what is clear is you probably want to have smaller tolerances in light RGB colors. And because that depends also on the production process, on the printing process, what you would consider to be gray in RGB and what not, that becomes adjustable. So there was a fixed tolerance in pdfToolbox 14, which I believe was 2% or is 2%. You can now adjust it. So in the advanced settings section here, you can have 6 new parameters. Yeah, and each one, so there are 2 for RGB graph and for RGB image, light. 2 for mid, for the mid field, and there again for graphical vector objects and images, and 2 for dark areas. And each of them allows you to specify the tolerance. And the tolerance can be specified in a range between 0% and 5% plus minus. So for instance, you could say, I want to have for RGB light, which is 80 to 100% red, RGB values, I want to use plus minus 1%. In the mid, I want to use plus minus 2% and 3% in the dark area. You can also only specify one of them. Important to know is in between it will be interpolated. Yeah? So when you specify the values and then in between it will be linearly interpolated. Okay? I forgot. Whenever there are any questions, just let me know. You have a chatbot for that. Just ask. Okay, moving on. Yeah, these are really small features, no source color profiles in image renditions. You can, as I've just said, for actions, you can convert a PDF page into an image. And usually and always in pdfToolbox 14, the result file will contain an ICC profile, either the default ICC profile or one that was associated with the PDF page. Usually that makes sense, but sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want device-dependent results. One advantage is the result file is slightly smaller. Yeah, so you have a new parameter in CLI and SDK only, so this is not available in desktop. No embed ICC profile, and then as you can see here in my example, you can save 3 kilobyte disk space on your in this example on your disk. Next one, output preview simulates gray and RGB, also color. So far you have the output preview in pdfToolbox that simulates the output. You can specify a simulation profile. So far you could only use CMYK profiles. From now on, you can also use RGB and probably even more important gray profiles, as what I have been doing here, a PDF page that is actually colorful. When used with a simulation profile for gray, will appear gray. Next one, page level transparency knockout groups. That not just sounds difficult, it actually somehow it is. So, and again, I need to explain a bit. This is not, to say it beforehand, not a feature that everybody of you will have to use. So, but it can be important in certain workflows. And if it's important, you probably should understand what's going on. So background. What actually is a knockout transparency group? You probably know a transparency group groups objects together and specify something about transparency for the objects in that group. Yeah, and in a knockout group, so, and here in my example, I have 3 color patches, and 2 of them, the blue and the red one, are transparent so that you can see the green object in the background through. And also the blue is transparent in front of the red one. If I would then put them into a transparency group and would give the transparency group the label knockout, out of a sudden, everything that is inside of the group isn't transparent anymore to each other. Yeah, so they are now opaque to each other. However, since they are still using transparency, if I would then use an additional background behind my group, in this case a yellow rectangle, then all the objects inside of the group that aren't transparent to each other will appear transparent in front of the yellow. So you can see the yellow shining through, but the blue and the red are still not transparent to each other. That is the background. That is how knockout transparency groups work and how they are specified in the PDF specification. Now, a PDF page can also be a transparency group. In fact, it by definition is, and almost never you will find the knockout label on page level. But sometimes you will find it, and we've seen that in support. And that means whatever objects are using transparency on the page, if the page is a knockout group, there effectively is no transparency. And it's not a big issue because every good viewer will just display it as it is. That means without transparency, and then you don't even notice that there is a page level transparency group that is set to knock out. However, if you would then place another object on that page that is actually using transparency, then out of a sudden you would have a problem, because out of a sudden it wouldn't appear transparent anymore. It would appear opaque, and that is what you wouldn't expect. What you can do in pdfToolbox 15, you have a check. Page is knockout transparency group that would identify such pages, and you also have a fix-up to remove that knockout label from the page level transparency group. That's that. And then 2 more things. I'm pretty good in time, actually. Very short, tiny little thing. You should know that it's there if you're interested in internal quality of PDF files. There is a new quick fix: convert PDF internal names to UTF-8. And there already is a fix-up with the very same name. So explanation is quite easy. It exactly does what the fix-up does. It only is a quick fix, so it works slightly faster. For instance, PDFX and PDFA require that all internal names are valid UTF-8 names. So, and it's a quick fix, so you can just run it, and usually you should have a better result than before. And finally, platforms and activation. pdfToolbox 15 supports Linux ARM environments. So, and that Linux ARM, the only Linux ARM available that environment that plays a role in reality is AWS Graviton. But there it's used a lot. So it's slightly cheaper than other CPUs that you can use on AWS. So If you want to use pdfToolbox in AWS and you are interested in AWS Graviton because it's slightly cheaper, you should go for pdfToolbox 15. And the other improvement in that regard is platform and cloud pdfToolbox desktop. So far, you could use pdfToolbox desktop only with license server and premise. You couldn't use it with our license server, with the callas software license server that is available in the cloud. That changes with pdfToolbox 15, so you can use pdfToolbox 15. If you don't have a license installed on your computer, you can use it against the license server in the cloud. And you can also use that on license server on premise with cartridge pools. Yeah, so full support of license server and pdfToolbox desktop. And that's it.